Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel where we try to make sense of the insanity that is our modern political landscape. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Harris campaign and the message they seem to be pushing to try to appeal to more moderate or undecided voters. This is undoubtedly a winning strategy that at this point only the Democrats seem to be interested in pushing, but does the message come across as authentic? Are undecided voters sold on these sudden changes to the Democratic talking points they're used to, especially on things like fracking and immigration? We already know that 2024 presidential nominee Kamala is running on a very different platform than 2020 primary candidate Kamala, and while it's clear based on polling that this new Kamala Harris supposedly holds more popular policy positions, I think a lot of people are still relatively unconvinced by her attempts to reassure the American people that she's not a, as former Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy put it, left of Bernie Sanders candidate. After all, first impressions tend to be pretty strong, and most of America was introduced to Vice President Harris as the primary candidate who implied that Joe Biden supported segregationists and opposed federal busing to desegregate schools.
But I also believe, and it's personal, and it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
But to be fair to Kamala, when it comes to winning a primary, lesser-known candidates have to make themselves stand out by distinguishing themselves from the more popular figures they're running against. And it could very well be the case that that's what she was doing in the 2020 primary. But the issue she's facing now is really a result of Joe Biden dropping out of the race, which of course isn't her fault, but you have to play with the cards that you're dealt. You see, if her campaign had known going into this election cycle that she was going to be the candidate, they would have had more time to strategize and find different ways to reintroduce her to the American people in a more presidential framing, instead of just thrusting her out into the spotlight as the last line of defense against another Trump presidency. No pressure there, right? Since becoming the Democratic candidate, including the debate, there have only been a handful of appearances made by Harris herself to get her message out there, and up to this point, she really hasn't knocked it out of the park with any of them. I'm not saying this to be a hater, I just don't think she's got the vibes or the instant likability for some people to be completely sold on her as their candidate. In the almost prophetic words of Politico's retrospective of Harris's 2020 primary run, several Harris aides, current and former, describe a kind of performance anxiety that washes over her in tense times. She can have trouble listening, processing, and answering in these moments, they say. She might be too quick to please a questioner, or she might engage the premise of their question rather than using it to make her own points. Other times, she reverts to the comfortable scripts in her head out of fear that she might say the wrong thing. This kind of statement does not inspire a very presidential image. While it seems like she's fixed part of that problem, the reverting to comfortable scripts thing seems to be front and center in this 2024 presidential run. We have all been unburdened by some of her most repeated lines, but even in what should have been a softball interview environment with Oprah, she kept going back to the same scripted lines we've already heard in other appearances. Even Oprah seemed to be trying to get her to relax and just talk extemporaneously about a topic without regurgitating the exact same scripted story from her DNC speech.
But when I was in high school, I learned that my best friend was being molested by her stepfather.
Yes, we heard that story on the DNC.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
you had the courage then to go to her and say, you've got to come to our house.
And she came to stay with us. I called my mother, she came to stay with us.
Oprah seems to cut her off here and quickly summarize the story that most people have already heard in order to help Kamala get to the point and maybe to get something more real out of her. This same tactic later on in the interview resulted in a totally viral clip where we got to see a brief unscripted moment of Kamala being herself.
These are just common sense. These are just common sense.
I thought it was so powerful at the convention when you said you have guns. No, at the debate.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If
And I thought
somebody
that was
breaks in
powerful.
my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, yes. I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that.
But
My staff will deal with that later.
See, Kamala started to go into the scripted, I'm a gun owner, Tim Walz is a gun owner, but Oprah interrupted and we saw a genuine moment, immediately followed by, I probably shouldn't have said that. No, Kamala, it's actually a good thing for you to be genuine like that, to take off the public speaking mask and show us the person underneath. I might disagree that the assault weapons ban would be a good or effective way to solve the gun violence problem we have, but this clip lends some credibility to her statements about not wanting to ban all guns. If we continue the clip, though...
But you have been a gun owner for a while.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
But here's my point, Oprah, is that, and think about it. I grew up, we had fire drills only. Well, I grew up in California. We also had earthquake drills. But the fact that our children are sitting in a classroom where they should be fulfilling their God-given potential and exploring the wonders of the world, and some part of their brain realizes somebody could bust through that classroom door with a weapon, with an assault weapon.
See, there it is. All this stuff about fulfilling their God-given potential and exploring the wonders of the world, it just comes across as a scripted line. There's nothing wrong with it inherently, but if everything you say sounds like it was written for the history books, you're going to have a really hard time coming across as being authentic. Which brings me back to my original point. The Harris-Walz campaign are trying to appeal to a more average and moderate crowd instead of focusing on what some would consider to be woke or far-left talking points, which is a good thing. If we're ever going to bring the temperature back down in the political discourse of this country, our leaders need to stop listening to the fringe members of both parties. But good strategies and winning talking points alone won't win an election. If a candidate comes across as being even a little bit anxious, unconfident, or inauthentic, that's a huge turnoff for a lot of voters. This is a corny old saying, but how many times in politics have people expressed their appreciation of a candidate by saying, he seems like the kind of guy I'd like to have a beer with? What this speaks to is a certain vibe a candidate gives off. Trump has it down. Even the people who hate him the most have to admit that he has a certain personal charm. I mean, he starred in a successful reality TV show. He was a celebrity. There's no denying that he has confidence and an ease about him when he speaks. If the Harris campaign is going to pull off a victory against him, she's got to do at least one appearance that feels unambiguously genuine. Have a group of people she's comfortable with talk to her about her policies, her principles, how she came to change her mind on some of these issues. Maybe chat about a hobby she has or something else that's relatable. Don't do it in front of an audience, and edit out any misspeaking, awkward pauses, or joyful laughter if you have to. But what the Democrats really need to do is give the hesitant voters something to reassure them that Kamala Harris is more than just an empty vessel that can memorize and repeat talking points. Or don't, and hope that enough people hate Trump not to vote him back into the White House in November. As of right now, there are undecided voters who do not want to vote for Donald Trump, but they also feel like Kamala's moderate talking points are going to end up being a bait and switch. They watched her raise her hand when asked if illegal immigrants should be given government health care in 2019. They saw reports that she helped raise funds for rioters and looters to post bail in 2020. And now in 2024, they see a candidate who might have performance anxiety, who reverts to the comfortable scripts in her head out of fear that she might say the wrong thing. But that's just my opinion. What do I know? I'm just a guy on the internet. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more. Until next time, guys, stay mid.